everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea and it's nice to have you guys here. Today I have a video that I have been meaning to do for quite a while and I've kind of been putting it off. It's just not a topic that I have felt super confident in talking about, but I feel like it needs to be talked about because I know I'm not the only one dealing with this and I'm not the only one who will deal with this in the future. So if this helps some people coming up, I think it's worth taking the risk and just making myself talk about it. I've got my notebook here with my notes. This is also kind of going to be a two-part video. So I'm just going to film them back to back. So today I'm going to talk about the post-PhD identity crisis, which I thought wasn't a real thing, and as I've been talking to people, I'm realizing it is more of a real thing. I don't know that it's like an official thing, but I definitely am not the only one dealing with this or struggling with this. And then on Friday, I'm going to kind of do a general life / YouTube channel update, things that you can look forward to this coming year, and all of that sort of thing that are also kind of related to the identity crisis I've been dealing with. So trying to get all my stuff in order and get my life sorted out, or at least on the path to being sorted out. And yeah, it's gonna be a journey this year, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying to be optimistic. So today we're talking about the post-PhD identity crisis. If you're sitting there thinking, great, I'm not a PhD student, I guess this doesn't apply to me, not so fast. I do think this will apply to anyone pursuing any college degree. I think life post-degree is never quite what we think it will be. So if you are still pursuing your undergrad or your master's, you might still be able to learn something from my experience. So I think it does have a wider kind of reach, I guess, than just those of us who've been on the PhD path. I'm going to try not to look at my notes too much, but I also don't want to miss anything. So for those of you who are relatively new or just need a reminder, I got my PhD back in May. Well, technically I defended it at the beginning of April, so I was officially Dr. Severson in April 4th, 2018, date that I will always remember. And then graduation was May 7th, and then my fancy diploma right here, because I didn't set this up intentionally, that arrived in the summer, and I burst into tears when I opened it and saw it in writing, because it's a very surreal moment. So it didn't start right away. The kind of questioning my identity didn't start right away. It kind of started to creep up over the summer. I enjoyed a really nice break over the summer. I did get my job offer the same week as graduation. So May 7th was graduation, and then I think, Thursday the 10th was my interview, and they called me an hour and a half later to offer me the job. That definitely felt a bit like a miracle. The timing of it was just, I had been so nervous about the summer and about the job search, and the fact that by the beginning of May I had a job offer, and it was a good job offer with benefits. I feel like a proper adult now. I have real health insurance and dental and vision and life insurance. Like, it's crazy. It was a really good job. I had absolutely no reason to turn it down. Not even like in the I'm panicking about having a job, but like I think even if I'd had some other offers, it still would have been where I ended up because it is a really good job and I really love it. And it just felt like the right job for right now. So the rest of the summer was pretty nice. I could just kind of relax. I didn't have to scramble to find a job before my lease on my apartment was up, and I didn't have to worry about those things. But as I was preparing for the fall semester, certain things started to creep in, and I started having certain thoughts about like, what am I doing? Because even when I took the job, I knew it wasn't going to be my forever job. I've been honest about that, and my employers know this as well. The job that I do tends to have a fairly high turnover. They knew that, there are other things that I'm wanting to pursue, but I told them in the interview, I definitely can see myself being here for at least the next 2 to 3 years. I didn't have immediate intentions on turning around and leaving right away. So it really was kind of a good thing for both of us. But as I'm thinking about what my eventual life beyond this job will be, which for those who don't know, I'm a full-time instructor at the university that I did said PhD from, and in the same department, which that's part of the issue, so I'll get to that in a moment. But the big question that started coming up was, if I'm not a PhD student anymore, who or what am I? Because being a PhD student had been such a huge part of my life, and being a part of the hashtag PhD Life community on Instagram, on Twitter, had also been a huge part of my life, and it still is, and I still will use hashtag PhD Life. But I've had some moments of doubt about that. Am I still a part of the PhD life? Because most of the people using that hashtag are PhD students or PhD candidates, and I'm no longer that. But I have a PhD. So, I have that degree. You can't take that degree away from me. So, wouldn't that mean I'm still in the PhD life? Really confusing and probably a bit too existential and meta, but these are the things that keep me up at night. When being a PhD student, being a grad student, has been a part of your professional and personal identity for more than 10 years, because it's literally been almost my entire adult life. I'm 37, will be 38 next month. So pretty much my entire 30s, and even part of my 20s has been about grad school and trying to figure out what my career path is going to be. The time in between my graduate degrees was when I first started teaching. So being in academia in one form or another, I've been doing that for over 10 years. And now it's kind of this feeling of, well, now what? This has been especially difficult since graduation because I'm not following a traditional academic path. A lot of PhDs do end up getting a job as an instructor or as a lecturer, some kind of non-tenure track position immediately following graduation. The job market these days is literal hell on earth and is very difficult. So more and more of us are not following the traditional academic path. And so what does it mean to be in academia, and who are you and what do you do as an academic if you're not that kind of holy grail expectation of being a tenure track assistant professor somewhere? Teaching full-time has been very different from teaching as a TA, and it's been made even more confusing by teaching in my former department. So I'm not a TA anymore, but I'm still in the environment that I was in as a TA. I'm not on the first floor with the TAs, I'm on the second floor with the instructors. But from my specific office, I can literally look over the side of the balcony because I'm kind of in a loft space, and I can look down at my former cubicle and see where my old desk office space used to be. So I'm a new teacher, but I'm not. I'm new as a full-time instructor within the department, and so there are slightly different rules and policies that I have to follow. And I also don't have, I feel like the TAs have a little bit more leeway. If they miss a deadline or something, no one's gonna fire a TA. But there is that feeling, that pressure for me now, this is my full-time job, they're paying me real money, they're giving me benefits, so I can't mess anything up. And that's a whole new pressure that I'm used to. I'm used to feeling pressure of don't screw up, because that was my whole PhD. But now it's not just will I graduate or not, it's I want to keep my job and my health insurance. And it's more of an irrational fear. I'm not actually at risk of losing my job. But I think when you finally have that kind of job and the benefits and all of that, you do feel like you have a little bit more to lose post-PhD, and that's a very terrifying feeling that I am not used to. So kind of related to that, there's also the inherent uncertainty that comes with being contingent faculty. So I am on a year-to-year renewable contract. From what everyone's been telling me, I should not be stressed about having my contract renewed. I'm in the process of starting to put together my annual review file. All of the other instructors who've been doing this for multiple years have been reassuring me that, like, it's just kind of a technicality, it's just a procedure, but, like, you know, do it to the best of my ability, but, like, my best is going to be good enough, so don't worry beyond that. But it's still hard when you kind of have to reapply for your job every year. That was something I really wasn't expecting. I thought I'd graduate with my PhD and I'd get a job and I would stay in that job, and I wasn't anticipating the kind of situation I'm in now. And so that's not just with the having to renew my contract, but just the work that I'm doing, the place that I'm doing it at, knowing that I don't want to stay in Arizona forever. So that right there is kind of an indication that I'm going to have to be looking for another job at some point. But again, if I'm not following the traditional academic path, and the more I've been investigating, you know, this whole identity crisis, the more I'm realizing I don't think I want to follow the traditional academic path. And so if I don't, then what? And it's really, really confusing. You know, I love my job. I love the people that I work with. It's a really good environment. It's a fairly healthy environment. Every job at every university is going to have office politics and academic politics and things like that. But I do genuinely like where I'm working, and I feel safe and I feel comfortable, and I don't feel like anyone's out to get me. It's not that kind of toxic environment. The other instructors that I work with are really great, and so I do love my job, but I know I'm not going to stay here forever. So it's kind of been complicated by just the general politics of academia, as well as politics in general. Every university is suffering from budget cuts. There's really no state in the entire US that is supporting really excellent academic funding for higher education, or primary and secondary education for that matter. So, like, education is going through a bit of a struggling time itself, and that's not going to get better anytime soon. And as much as I love teaching and being in this environment, I kind of am craving a little bit of stability, or at least feeling like I have more control over my income, over the work that I do, and that I'm not worried that there's going to be a massive budget cut and they're going to fire half of the teachers at any given university. Like, the recession of 2008 was really bad. They were laying off teachers where they had previously never laid off teachers. Usually at higher education, we'll just have the occasional hiring freeze, but it has been rare in past decades to see kind of serious layoffs, which is what took me so long to finally get my first teaching assignment after my first master's degree. And also why I went back to grad school, because all of the jobs in education that I was finding that were full-time were requiring a PhD. It's kind of like, yet again, I've done everything that was expected. I did the PhD, and now I can't even find a long-term, full-time teaching situation. You know, I kind of thought I'd graduate and I would get that tenure track job. You know, I was looking at more of the smaller liberal arts colleges, not a big research university, but now there's really no easy teaching job to get. They are all highly competitive and really, really difficult. Even with my notes, I feel like I'm still a bit all over the place, so I'm sorry. But then there's also that feeling of, I've come all this way and I've done all this work and I've started building this kind of research agenda. I've done the PhD. Am I allowed to walk away and completely change my path? Or will that disappoint my friends and family? Will people question, why did you do a PhD in the first place if you're going to end up doing something else? Will other academics look down on me because I'm still doing my research, but I'm not a tenure track or tenured professor somewhere. We really don't have a whole lot of super public, highly visible, non-traditional academics. There are some, but it's kind of rare. And I haven't seen anyone following the type of academic path that I'm starting to feel like I would like to do, which might be the topic of another video because I'm not sure I'm able to articulate the academic path I'm starting to envision in this video because it's already getting long. But let me know if you'd like to know that. I'll probably do it anyway, but if you are interested, I will try to do it sooner rather than later. Alongside all of this, my mental health, I mean, the identity crisis has definitely been impacting my mental health. As a result of all of these thoughts that I've been having, my anxiety and depression have gotten worse than they have ever been. Starting in the summer, and then throughout the fall, it's kind of been a steady decline, and it has been a real struggle. I'm working on that, and I'm working on getting help, and I'm working on reaching out to people and providers and resources. So no one worry. But like, that was something else that took me by surprise. I kind of feel like there's a bit of a myth that we all kind of carry, even if we don't talk about it, that life after PhD will be better. We'll sleep more, we'll have more work-life balance, we'll see our family and friends, we'll have a social life, we'll read for fun. Life will just be so much better after we graduate. And no, the reality is that honestly, life is what you make it. So it's not just this magic wand that gets waved over you at graduation that just boop, your life is amazing now because you've got your PhD. It's almost like now the real work begins, because throughout your PhD you will have a framework, you'll have guidelines, you'll have a checklist. These are the classes you have to take. These are the steps you have to take. Got to do your coursework. You've got to do these papers. You've got to try to do some conferences and try to get a publication, and you need to come up with your prospectus and write your dissertation and then defend it. Like, we've got a very rigid kind of framework or guideline of what we're supposed to do over the course of those years. Once you graduate, all of that vanishes and you are on your own. And that's hard. I think part of me has been craving having someone to tell me, do this, now do that, now do this, now do that, because I don't know what to do. And left to my own devices, all I have wanted to do is sleep. Every time something happens, even the tiniest little thing, I am struck with this mental overwhelm and paralysis where I get so overwhelmed with even the tiniest little thing that I then can't do anything. That is something this year in 2019 that I'm really trying to break down, that kind of mental pathway behavior pattern. Like, I don't want my first instinct when I start to feel overwhelmed to be to go lay down and take a nap, because nothing's going to get done if I do that. So it's definitely been something that I'm having to work on. I feel like in the beginning, when I first started feeling this, I was feeling really isolated and really alone because my closest friends still hadn't finished their PhDs yet. So I didn't really have anyone. And I also, the people that I knew who have graduated are in their kind of dream job. Not that it hasn't still been a struggle for them, but they're already kind of where they were planning on ending up. I don't really know anyone who has finished their PhD but is being confronted by the fact that things aren't working out the way that they planned or the way that they'd always kind of been told or assumed that it would. But I have been, over the last kind of month or so, been starting to hear people identifying with this whole idea of a post-PhD identity crisis. And a lot of them are also people who did not end up in a tenure track position. I think a lot of us are going to be struggling with this, not to like terrify anyone who's nearing graduation, but I think it is something to be prepared for, because the job market, depending on your field, but certainly within the humanities, so I'm in an English program, those are the jobs that I was looking for. And I do have professional writing experience or teaching experience, which is what a lot of the jobs in rhetoric and composition programs were specifically looking for. But that's not my research agenda. I don't study it. I just teach it. With there being fewer and fewer tenure track jobs, more and more of us are going to be coming up with kind of having to confront this idea of, well, things aren't working out the way I'd always assumed they would, so now what? And so that's why I think if you are still in your PhD, or again, this applies to, the job market in general is really rough. I think a lot of undergrads just assume they're going to get this amazing job making a really great salary straight out of their undergrad. And that's not the way it is for us. The economy is still recovering. Jobs have gotten better. Unemployment rates are doing better, but you're still not ending up in your dream job straight out of the gate. And so I think more and more of us, and I kind of wish I'd been thinking about this sooner in my PhD, like around the third year, kind of sooner. The third out of a 5-year program. I wish I'd started thinking of this then. Like, what other than the traditional path would excite me? Because I feel like I'm not fully prepared for anything outside of a traditional academic path. I have been prepared for that kind of tenure track assistant professorship in terms of how I do my research and teaching, all the kind of professional training that we get. So if I don't do that, what am I doing? And if I'm not an academic, or if I'm not a traditional academic, who am I? What is, again, it gets a bit existential and kind of scary. Like, what am I doing? What is my purpose? What is the meaning of life? Where do we go from here? I guess is kind of the last bit of this video. There is no neat and tidy ending because I'm still in the middle of this crisis. And I feel like crisis is probably too dramatic of a word. Identity shift is definitely accurate. There are moments where it does feel a bit like a crisis, and then there are other moments where like it just feels like, okay, something is changing, but I don't know what, and I don't know how to articulate it. And then that usually leads me back into the crisis moment because I don't know the answers to these questions. So I think how you deal with this, if you end up kind of in the same situation, it's going to vary from person to person, and it kind of depends on what your expectations were and what your new reality is. But I do think it's important, and this is something that I've been kind of struggling to do, but letting go of previous expectations. I'm kind of having to pry them out of my hands. I've been gripping on to my expectations very tightly, and I'm having to let them go. I'm also trying to remind myself of one of my favorite quotes, which is, life is not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And so 2019 is definitely kind of the year of creating myself and really deciding, okay, everything else aside, wiping the table completely clean, rebuilding myself from the ground up with everything that I have in my toolbox. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And that is a very scary thing to contemplate, but I think that's the only way forward, to really kind of take all of those previous expectations, everything that others are assuming you're going to do, all of those assumptions other people have about your life, just wiping that completely off the table and starting from scratch is really, I think, the only way forward for me. Which is a bit terrifying. I'm still working on these things, but I wanted to talk about this because I know every time I have felt like I'm struggling with something and feeling like I'm the only one who feels this way, I make a video about it and I put it up, and a bunch of you comment or message me privately on Instagram or Twitter and tell me, oh my gosh, I've been feeling the same thing. So some of you might not even be post your PhD yet, but you're already starting to feel this way. I was definitely starting to feel this way when I started going on the job market because I could see how bad it was, and I knew, number one, I'm not competitive enough as a person, like just mentally and personally, but number two, my qualifications aren't competitive enough. Like, I can't compete in the current job market. It's not that I'm not a great researcher, I'm not a great scholar, it's not that I'm not a great teacher. Like, I am good at all of those things. I'm a great teacher, I'm a really good scholar, I've got fascinating research, and that's not just me saying it, other people have agreed. But it's not what most of these jobs are looking for. And so I knew that was going to be a problem. Some of you are probably already starting to kind of feel this, so you're not alone. I think that's the most important thing. You are not alone. I think this is actually far more common than anybody talks about, especially for those of us who have gone the non-tenure track route. There is such a stigma against non-tenure track jobs. There's also a stigma related to that against teaching jobs. So people who go into more of a teaching focus rather than a research focus. It's just assumed that if you have a PhD, you're going to go be a brilliant researcher and scholar, and teaching is, I don't know, somehow beneath us. I've never understood that because I've always wanted to be a teacher and have my research be kind of secondary. I've never liked the publish or perish mentality that the academia has. But I think that for those of us who have, for one reason or another, found ourselves in non-tenure track positions, we don't want to talk about it because of that stigma. Even when you are in a situation, I saw someone talking about this on Twitter, how they're in a non-tenure track position, but they've got all of the security, all of these benefits, they love what they do, so why is there still stigma around that? Why was their advisor advising them not to take a non-tenure track position? Like, why is that the mentality for PhD advisors, to tell the graduate students, whatever you do, don't accept a non-tenure track position? I think for those of us who have gone into that direction, it just compounds the problem. It just adds another layer to it. But then you've also got PhD students who know that they do want that tenure track position, and they're gunning for it year after year, and they're, every year they're back on the job market, constantly applying for these, ever elusive tenure track jobs. That is, to me, a living nightmare as well. Like, I can't imagine going on the job market year after year trying to get this job, and what that would do to you mentally and psychologically and emotionally year after year when you don't get that job. So I think this whole post-PhD identity crisis is unfortunately much more real than you kind of think it is as you're going through it. Like, you are not alone. You are not the only one dealing with us. A lot of us are feeling this way. So that is it for this video. I'm sorry that it got kind of long. Hopefully I've been able to edit it down a little bit, but there's just a lot to talk about. If you have any questions about anything I've addressed in this video, or on the topic of the post-PhD identity crisis, leave them in the comments below, or ask me on Instagram or Twitter, and I can maybe do a Q&A video related to this video, so just let me know. And yeah, I will see you all again on Friday, same place, same outfit, same hair, to kind of give you an update on what you can expect from this channel and just my life in general, because they're kind of intertwined going forward this year. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Just so I kind of know if you enjoyed this, whether it was relevant to you or not. Say hi down in the comments. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know if any of this resonated with you in any way possible. And subscribe if you are not subscribed so you don't miss out on any upcoming content. And I will see you all soon in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye-bye.